Okay, in this video we're going to demonstrate how to conduct processing of records that are PDF pages. Before we do that, we're going to jump to the glossary and explain some of these terms that are helpful. Kindex has or hosts archives for our customers. In each archive resides collections and sub-collections. And within those collections or sub-collections, they can contain a record or records, okay? We never call records in Kindex files. We never call collections or sub-collections in Kindex folders, because those terms represent local terms. So for example, if you have a folder, that implies it is on your local device. If you have a file, that implies it is on a local device. Okay. The only reason we like to distinguish that is because it's confusing when you're saying files, because I think that you're talking about a computer file on your local computer versus a record that's in Kindex. So once it gains access, or rather once we provide it to a Kindex archive and is in the cloud, it becomes a record within a collection or sub-collection, both of which live in an archive. Okay, I hope that helps. So let's jump into the processing steps of a PDF. Now, the key points, if those of you are not typically working for Kindex, to realize here, these highlights in purple are very, very helpful for you to just use as a standard. You don't have to follow the standard. This is just what internally our staff uses when we prepare files before they get uploaded into Kindex. This step is called processing. There are 3 steps, 1, 2, and 3. Generally speaking, the first step has to do with making sure that files are rotated properly, making sure that there are duplicate pages. If there are duplicate pages, they're removed, blank pages that are removed and then saved. It's a very simple process. We actually have one person do processing 1 internally, then we have another person do processing 2 internally, and then we have another person doing processing 3 internally. So you likely will be doing all 3 steps, but the highlights in purple are probably what you need to pay attention to the most. Okay, so the first step here, as you see, it says rotate records in a preferred program if necessary. Kindex can batch rotate any number of JPEG or PNG files. Now, this is a step that's on the computer, so we're dealing with files, not records, okay? And we are using a program called Adobe Acrobat Pro, not Reader, because Reader does not allow some of these advanced features. So the very first page, as you can see, is just kind of it looks almost like a folded letter, like it's been folded up and it was scanned that way. And then we've got a few other pages that looks like a 2-page letter. And then we've got a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5-page letter with some sun damage on it, or some kind of damage. That's why its coloring is a little different. Or maybe the scanner was a little different. And then we've got another letter, 1, 2, 3, 4, a 4-page letter there. Okay. Now the tricky part about this particular PDF document is because what's tricky about it is because we have a whole smattering of records that are just kind of, or sorry, files that are placed together side by side, back to back, okay? This is unusual, but oftentimes we see this when you scan in what's called an automatic document feeder. You just leave it on and you just shove stuff through and it just stitches them all together in one massive PDF. So this is kind of a common thing that you can see. We don't recommend scanning like that. We recommend you scan one document at a time. All right, now we're going to position these appropriately and also extract them into separate files and even rename them in this example. Now this is kind of a disparate record, so I'm going to go ahead and right click this and I'm going to say extract pages, and I'm going to delete it from this PDF file, and it's going to pop it up here, and then I'm going to say save as, and I'm going to put it in a particular folder that I want. And I'm going to pretend that it's in the Documents folder. And before I just hit save, I'm going to call this letter-01.pdf. This is our naming standard, and we'll talk about that in a minute. Now that I've saved that one individual, kind of a disparate letter, I can go ahead and close out of it. Now, because it is disparate, I think it would be wise to make sure that you actually mark disparate letters as disparate. So I'm going to pull this back. I'm going to go into that Documents folder, and I'm going to add _disparate because it looks like it was kind of an orphaned letter. In other words, it had other pages to it, even an envelope that was missing. Sometimes you'll find disparate documents. Okay, so we'll pull that back away, and I'm going to continue on. Now we have these two pages which pretty much look like the same, need to become an individual record in and of themselves. So just one PDF file that's 2 pages. Now note, sometimes the author in a letter situation will have page numbers, sometimes they don't. You can see there's a 2 there that's kind of turned on its side. And this, we can tell this is actually kind of a 1-page, 2-pager. For whatever reason, there is no envelope on this one, so I'm going to go ahead and click these 2. And how I did that is I clicked on the first, then I hit Shift, clicked the second one, and I'm going to again do extract, delete pages after extracting, and then again File, Save As, and I will call this just in sequence of what we did in the other one. Letter2.pdf. Now this was not a disparate one, so I'm just going to go ahead and say save. Okay, and now as you can see, we're whittling down our pages here. So now we've got another page, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 to make. So we got another future file that's going to have 5 pages. And you might be curious if this is actually really a subsequent letter. So if you're ever concerned whether or not it is a subsequent page, read it in context and see if it flows over naturally to here. Where it gets tricky is when they end a paragraph or sentence. You don't know necessarily if it does flow over, but because the scanner, I'm assuming, did these, just kind of ran these through, and these would be orphaned otherwise, I'm going to assume that these last 2 pages apply to these first 2 pages. And you can do other tricks like looking at the creases and realizing, oh, there's a crease here, there's a crease here, there's also a crease here and a crease here, and it's also creased this way too, if you can see that. So therefore these are likely all bound together in one letter document. So I'm going to go ahead and click the top, hit Shift click the bottom, and then I'm going to extract pages, and we'll delete those after extracting, and then I'm going to go ahead and save these as letter3.pdf. Close out that, and then I'll move on to the last one. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4 pages here to comprise one file. So I'm going to go ahead and click at the top, click Shift, click at the bottom, and then all of them in between are highlighted. And then I can go ahead and say extract again. Now in this case, because I've already extracted everything from this page, I could just save over the top of this file, or not save over the top of it, save it as a different name. So I'm going to go ahead and say, let's not do that. I'm just going to say File, Save As. Letter3.pdf. Or maybe letter 4 is what it was. Okay. All right, so now I have successfully processed those PDF documents that were kind of stitched together all back to back. Now, if you ever have a situation where you need to rotate something, Acrobat does have these nice little tools where you can rotate. Okay, please, please, please make sure that you rotate your records before you save them as in the final step of processing 2, okay? So rotate them either in 1 or 2, it doesn't really matter. Just make sure that before you save them finally, before you go to processing 3, which is when you upload the files into the system, please make sure that you rotate things. If the system believes that there's something upside down or sideways, it's going to struggle in trying to read that handwriting or that typed text. So please make them face up, not to mention the fact that it's going to be hard for your viewers or readers to see things that are upside down or sideways. In this example, we're going to bypass Adobe Acrobat Pro altogether, and we're going to stitch documents using the Finder of an Apple computer. So assuming you have the latest and greatest version of Apple, there's a nice little setting here. It's like a quick command where you can merge PDFs together by simply clicking the 2 or 3 or 5 that you want to merge together in order. So I'm going to click the top and then the second, and I hit Shift to make those both highlight, and I'm going to right click on those both, and I'm going to say Quick Actions, Create PDF. And that just bound those together. And then it popped up a little Finder window telling me, look, I put these 2 together for you. That's why it says _2. Now I don't care about these any longer. Those 2 are now bound together. So I put those 2 records together. Now these are probably not the best documents to stitch together, but at least it's a good demonstration of how to do that quickly without having to bring them in here and pop them out and extract them visually. You can just simply use the Finder to join things together very quickly, assuming they are already in sequentially arranged. So let's say I want to put these 2 together again. I just hit Shift click, right click, Quick Actions, Create PDF, and then I can go ahead and delete those 2, and now I have records that are bound together there, or stitched together, and then records that are stitched together there. In this example, I'm going to demonstrate how Apple allows you to rename in batch form a whole host of files all at once. Let's suppose that I discover that we have over, let's say, 130 letters, okay, in this whole batch. We're only on the 4th, but I need to put zeros in front of all these so that we have 3 variables. So a tricky way to do that in your Apple computer is if you hit right click on a record, you can do rename. Okay, that's how you typically rename. But if you want to do a batch rename, you can click the top, hit Shift, click the bottom, and then right click and say rename. And then you have a little prompt that pops up and says, well, how do you want to rename these? Do you want to replace text? Do you want to add text? Do you want to format the variables anew to something different? Now in this case, I do want to replace text because I want to add a new 0 between this dash and the next subsequent 0. So I'm going to go ahead and say replace text. I'm going to say find -0 and replace with -00, and then I'm going to say rename. And automatically you now have 3 variables, but 2 zeros in front of every number. Now if you have a whole bunch of numbers, obviously once you get to 10 you can only have 2 variables, so you've got to select accordingly and change the variables accordingly. So just note that's how that works. Now let's suppose I want to change the formatting and I don't want to do a find and replace of variables or values within a file name. Okay, so I can do right click and I can say rename, and this time I'm going to change the format, and let's say that I'm going to call these documents. Okay, I can say doc-00, and then it says start numbers at 1. But let's say I want to start numbers at 7. Okay, then I could say, well, let's say 6. Okay, then I say rename, and that's how that would change. Okay, so again, Apple computers have this nice little feature that when multiple files are selected, you can change the format, or you can replace text, and you can even add text if you want to. You can append stuff at the end. So let's say I wanted to say these are letter documents. Okay, I could do that, and then it appends it either to the front or the back of the file. Okay, so you'll notice that the very last step of process 2, we have this rename files, see naming and sorting, and learn to batch rename. Okay, we're going to talk a little bit about how to name files so that we have a standardized convention or naming convention in Kindex. Again, you can create your own conventions if you want in your own archives, but this is how we do things internally at Kindex. When you name a file, you start out with the type of document that it is, type of record that it is, will ultimately be a record when it's in Kindex, a dash, hyphen, then a numbering convention, and then an extension. If you have documents, volumes, which are bound records, images, audio, then it'll tell you the kind of format that we recommend. Now, this is not the exclusive format that it must be in, but we're just recommending these formats. Audio files also can be M4As, so that does not show up there. So that's going to be your convention for those kinds of documents. So in this case, you'll see that I have letter-04.pdf. The reason why I have 04 instead of 004 is because I'm assuming that this might have in the future additional letters to it that will extend beyond 10, okay, 10 or more. And so when you have less than 99 files in a collection, you don't need to use more than 2 variables for those 99 files or less collection. If you think that you're going to have more than 100 files in a collection, then you'll need to use 3 variables, and the same goes with the thousands. So if you have less than 9 or 9 or less, then you could just say letter-4.pdf, letter-5, letter-6, all the way to letter-9, but the moment that you have 10, you'll probably want to have 2 variables. If you're curious why we're doing that, it's because whether you have a natural sort system or an alphabetical sort system, both will be ordered in the appropriate manner if you follow this convention. Okay? Now in Kindex, we do actually sort things naturally, not alphabetically. We actually used to have an alphabetical sort early on, but we've since changed it so that it can match the same way that you store your files on your computers, your local computers. Note also, there are some formats that are incompatible with Kindex. The formats that are compatible with Kindex are generally speaking those that are allowed in most browsers, okay? So PDFs, JPEGs, MP3s, M4As, and MP4s are acceptable.